The greatest gift you can give your child is a strong relationship between you and your partner. Dr. John Gottman.
You're listening to Parenting in the Rain, Insights from the Experts podcast, episode 36.
Welcome to Parenting in the Rain, Insights from the Experts podcast, providing parents all around the world with valuable knowledge to help with the biggies of family life. Here's your host, a registered play therapist, education specialist, parent coach, and my mom, Jackie Flynn.
Hi there, Jackie Flynn here. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Parenting in the Rain podcast. Well, at the time of this recording, it is the second day of fall, and I live in Central Florida, so we're not noticing a big change in temperatures at all. It's still pretty hot outside. I went for a brisk walk this morning, and it was just as hot as ever, but there is that hope for cooler weather in the future, that cool fall crisp air and the smell of pumpkin spice in the air. Now this year I've really taken a turn in lifestyle changes in regards to making healthier choices, so I may not drink as many pumpkin spice lattes as I have in the past, which is sad, but also it's a good thing. All right, today's episode is all about enjoying a happy and healthy marriage even in difficult parenting situations. Parenting can get really stressful at times, especially if you have difficult circumstances. Kids are so different in regards to their strengths and the needs they may have. Some kids have some very special needs that require an extra set of skills, and some maybe not as much as others. Those specialized skills can really make a difference, but it also lends itself to higher conflict in a couple relationship if they don't necessarily agree on the best way to parent. And as we know through Gottman couples therapy, that a lot of times couples don't agree. Actually, they have some research showing that 69% of the conflict in marriages is perpetual. So it's something that you may not ever agree on in those situations, but the key is to not get gridlocked on them, to be able to work through conflict in a healthy way. So that's kind of what direction we're going in today. Now, when I talk about the specialized set of skills that it takes in terms of parenting, I want you to think about maybe parents that have kids with attention deficit disorder or an autism spectrum disorder. They really benefit from having a higher level of patience and education about what's going on neurologically and behaviorally for the kid, as well as some really specific strategies to help their child focus and really minimize those impulsive behaviors, and to help with organization skills. That can really leave someone feeling exhausted at the end of the day. So tolerance levels sometimes get low. While other parents may be really kind of struggling through parenting a child that had early childhood trauma, which requires an entirely different set of skills, but patience, love, and empathy is always good across the board. But that level of understanding of how trauma is and how best to respond. Difficult situations lend themselves to parenting disagreements, which can strain a marriage, because everybody comes to this situation with their own history, with their own thoughts about the situation, and they don't necessarily agree, even if they're married. Sometimes, especially if they're married, it really depends on couple to couple too. It varies greatly. So in today's episode, we're really going to discuss the four, it's been kind of identified as predictors of divorce. So these four things that we're going to talk about can really be indicators that your marriage is in trouble or headed for trouble. So it's really good to know them. That way you can kind of change how you're doing things. And it really helps us not only to prevent that sometimes even divorce, by making your marriage more enjoyable, even when you have a perpetual problem, like what is the best way to parent this situation. Unfortunately, though, some parents do become gridlocked on this issue, and sometimes it can lead to divorce. So I'm so glad that you're listening to this episode. If you are noticing some of these things, it's really important to educate yourself, and sometimes if you feel like professional counseling is necessary, it can make a big difference. It can really help your family and your marriage be a happier and healthier place. So my work is strongly influenced by my level 3 training in Gottman method couples therapy. This type of therapy is based on research from thousands of couples. I love how they really based it on data. So it's not that willy-nilly approach. It's really based on data. And when I meet with couples in my office, the first thing we do is start off with assessment. So it's very intentional, and we work on the things that really are showing up as struggles in the couple's relationship. It's the very best type of marriage therapy available, in my opinion. So if you're considering couples therapy for your relationship, consider finding a therapist trained in Gottman therapy in your area. I think that when we look at couples therapy, there's a certain amount of vulnerability and a certain amount of hope, a certain amount of expectation that comes with that. So why not reach out for the very best type of therapy and really give your efforts a really good shot of really making a difference? And some people say, well, we can't afford it. When you look at the benefits of marriage counseling, the cost of it is totally worth it, in my opinion, and it's much cheaper than the alternative, which is, if you don't fix these problems, the risk at, getting divorced, which can be much more costly financially, but in a much more meaningful way, costs that family unit. So Gottman therapy is the way to go. Your time will be used more efficiently, and your therapeutic treatment together will be designed around your custom needs, which I think is so very important. In Gottman therapy, you get all kinds of opportunities to really change things in your relationship to make it happier and healthier, and to feel heard and understand and help with that communication, help heal from betrayals and years of loneliness. It can delve into so many different areas. I love it. Like I said, it does start with assessments, and then that assessment is used to create a treatment plan with interventions to address specifically those problematic areas. I love it. It tends to be maybe a little bit more costly in some situations than that traditional therapeutic approach, because the sessions are usually longer, not always. So really kind of look to see what's available in your area. I really like to do 90-minute sessions with my couples so we can go in depth and really give it that time and effort that it deserves. And it's so much cheaper than letting your marriage fall apart over these things that, if intervened in the correct way, it can really kind of raise your chances of that longevity in that marital or that couple relationship. And it works with all kinds of couples. So, kind of look at it, do some research, see if it's right for you. But I think you'll be impressed by all of the wonderful research and interventions and intentionality that this therapy has to offer. Again, it's called Gottman Method Couples Therapy. One big piece of it is the 5 positives to 1 negative ratio that keeps a couple relationship healthy. I really teach this to parents and teachers and anybody that I talk to, the importance of really having way more positives than negatives. When they looked at couples that were headed for divorce, and then later on, like in that longitudinal study that ultimately, did get divorced, their positive to negative ratio was even less than 1-to-1. So you want to make sure that you have 5 positives to every negative to keep your relationship healthy. And a positive can be a smile, it could be a gesture, it could be holding out your hand for your partner to hold it, it could be asking, how was your day? Something that doesn't have to be grandiose or a big gift or anything like that. It could be a gesture of, hey, I'm interested in you, I love you, I'm with you on this. So one thing that Gottman method couples therapy really looks at is really that turning towards each other. So they talk about bids for connection, and that's just really a way of partners attempting to connect with each other in some way. So there's 3 options when somebody makes a bid for connection. So that bid for connection could be, hey, look at this funny thing I saw on Facebook, or how was your day? And then having a response, or a smile, or holding your hand out, or asking if they want to go out to dinner or have a special date night. There's 3 different ways that you can respond. You can turn toward, which is of course the healthiest way, turning toward. You can turn away and just not respond at all, or you can turn against, which is done in a very contemptuous way, a very hurtful way. Now, studies show that after somebody makes so many bids for connection, if it's not accepted, then they kind of stop making those bids, and that looks like emotional distance in the relationship, and that's when things feel rocky. Turning towards is ultimately what makes that marriage flourish and really feel good throughout the years. But the turning away and turning against, it leads to slowing down or maybe even just quitting altogether, and that feels so lonely. And it can really leave someone feeling resentful and bitter in many ways. And in a marriage, that looks like maybe parallel living situations where I live in the same house with this person, but I don't feel connected with this person, kind of like a stranger or a roommate. So accept those bids for connection from your partner, even if it's something little. It could be just kind of reaching out, giving them a smile, asking them, how are you doing, saying good morning. Those little things can make a huge difference. And one thing that they point out in the Gottman method couples therapy is physically turning towards your partner. So imagine you're typing on the computer and your partner comes in to talk to you. Stop typing, turn around, stand up, and look face to face. And you may recognize some of these things sound very similar to the child-parent relationship therapy in terms of really kind of connecting with each other. So it's really important to stop and turn towards your partner, because that sends a message to them that, hey, I'm important. And that's a way to accept that bid for connection, and that's a way to get one of those positives, or several. You could get several in one setting, positives to negative ratio. And when you're in high stressful situations in a parenting situation, you want to make sure that you do really load up on the positive interaction, because those stressful times hit and the conflict can creep in and make that ratio go the other way. So make sure you make a conscious effort to have more positives than negatives. And as John Gottman found in his research, 5-to-1 is that number that you want to shoot for. More is definitely better, but 5-to-1 is that range. And really just letting someone know, hey, you're important to me. All right, so those 4 predictors of divorce, or really just like an unhappy relationship, we're going to talk about now. He calls them the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. But luckily, it's not just for bad things. There are some antidotes, some ways to really circumvent these things if you notice them in your relationship. So there's 4 things. There's the criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. Now, know that as parents, your kids are really watching how you're interacting with each other. Even if you think that it's behind a closed door, kids are so very perceptive and they pick up on things. So not only are you really helping your marriage when you avoid these things, you're creating a healthy blueprint for your child of what good, strong relationships look like. Not only that marital relationship or that couple relationship that they may enter later on in life, but also the relationship with others. So let's look at these 4 things, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Criticism is the first one. This is really attacking of your partner's character, who they are and what they stand for. It can start out sounding like a complaint, but it can quickly transform into like a hurtful form of communication that can be really difficult to heal from. It can cut deep, especially if it's done on a repeated basis. Now, we talked about antidotes. The antidote for criticism is to complain without blaming your partner. So to be able to make a complaint, but leaving out that blame piece. Now I know when I'm in session with clients, that's really learning a new way to complain, because there may be a complaint followed by, well, this is your fault type of statement. So we practice complaining about certain things without that blame. That's a good antidote. So I want to be clear though, complaining can be healthy, because when it's not done, you kind of put yourself at a risk for resentment about things that are unexpressed and that can leave you feeling bitter. So you need to get that out there, but you want to do it in a healthy way, not in a way that takes the form of criticism. It can cause us to get bitter to hold all that in, and Gottman talks about an issue called negative sentiment override, and that's when the negative stuff feels so much heavier than the positive stuff. And if you don't communicate, that negative sentiment override can move right in. So you want to make sure that your negatives are definitely less than your positives, but you do want to make sure that you communicate with your partner. We don't want to get in a situation where it's conflict avoidance, because that puts the couple relationship at risk for many things as well. And that's not necessarily a connected relationship if there's that conflict avoidance, because there's certain things you got to work through. And remember, 69% of the problems in a couple's relationship are perpetual. So the goal isn't necessarily to agree on things, and a lot of times you can, but sometimes, actually most of the time, you can't. So we look at what to do with that too. Usually that kind of looks like compromise after the couple has really learned new ways to speak to each other and communicate with each other. Then later on down the road, then we can look at compromise and what does that look like. It's a really great type of therapy. So this may sound like, and we're still on the criticism part of the 4 horsemen, may sound like you always scream at him during homework time. So that sounds pretty critical and sounds pretty attacking, right? So the antidote for that may sound like, I'm feeling frustrated about homework time. Can we please discuss ways that can help him focus? So notice that there wasn't any blame, but there's definitely that, hey, something's not right here and we need to make a change statement. All right, so let's move on to defensiveness. defensiveness. We all kind of know what this feels like. Even saying the words, I can kind of feel it in my body, maybe in my chest and my throat, getting that tightness feeling. And that's one part of this therapy too, just really checking in with your body and noticing how you're feeling during certain things can help you know when to self-soothe and when to calm down and come back and discuss later. So defensiveness is a way of a partner just defending themselves against an attack that they believe is coming, like a perceived attack. In an indirect way, it can be actually a form of blaming your partner. So it's done in a different kind of way, but it can still feel like really hurtful. The antidote for defensiveness is for you to take blame for part of the problem. Now, this can get kind of confusing sometimes, but even if you feel like, hey, this is not my fault, looking at the entire picture and really looking into, okay, what is something that maybe I could have done better? That can really be the antidote for that defensiveness. So let's look at how this would sound in a parenting situation. It's not my fault that she's fell in school. It's your fault for not helping her with her homework. You're just too busy thinking about your own stuff. So that sounds very defensive and blaming. The antidote for that may sound like, well, part of this is on me. I could have helped her with the homework too. Let's talk about a way to get her the help that she needs. So do you notice how she didn't take all of the blame for the problem, or the one parent that had the antidote there for defensiveness, but a little bit of acceptance and willingness to change. All right, so let's move on to the next one, which is contempt. And this can start out sounding like criticism, but it takes a deeper, more painful level with actions such as name calling and putting down your partner in some big, global way, attacking their overall sense of personality or their being or just who they are. This can be really hurtful, and this can really kind of cut deep. It sends that message of, hey, I'm superior to you, I'm better than you. And it can sound like mockery, cynicism, sarcasm, just that degrading someone else. And I know when I think about that, I kind of feel that feeling in my gut like, ugh, gosh, it's really hard to even kind of think about, much less feel like that. So contempt is very unhealthy in relationships. So know that with all of these things, you may think, well, that definitely is present in our relationship. Are we headed for divorce? Not necessarily. Understanding is a big piece of it, and having this knowledge can help you change the way that you're communicating with each other, especially in these difficult parenting situations. But know that you may benefit from assistance from a professional counselor that's trained in this type of therapy. It can make a big difference. All right, so let's kind of think about what is the antidote for that contempt. And what does it sound like? So that contempt might sound like, you are the worst parent ever. You don't know anything. And the antidote, I know that's awful, right? That just feels awful even just to read it and hear it. The antidote may sound like this. This parenting stuff is hard. I'm glad we have each other handle this as a team, but I would like to get some help. See how that takes a different tone, and there's not that putting down the other parent or really kind of attacking them as an overall bad parent. All right, so the fourth one is stonewalling. Stonewalling is pretty much how it sounds. It's like a stone wall, having no response to your partner's actions, whether they're good or whether they're bad. It's like that shutting down and withdrawing from any kind of interactions in a way that just sends the message to your partner of, you're not even worth me looking at you or listening to you. That can feel really hurtful, and that can really take that disconnect to a dangerous level, because then once that situation is kind of shut down, then the emotions can escalate really quickly, and it can leave people feeling gridlocked. And gridlocked is when there's some really hard emotions around a problem and there's no moving one way or the other. It just feels like you're stuck because the processing of the information just halts with that stonewalling, and the feelings of resentment can set in a really heavy way. So the antidote to the stonewalling is just really to self-soothe. And through therapy, we teach the clients to self-soothe. We do some physiological monitoring, like with the pulsometers. But notice that when you get in an argument with your spouse or really with anybody, your body has certain feelings that go with it. And I know through my work, I do a lot of body-based therapy. I'm influenced a lot by Peter Levine's work, where we kind of really notice where the pain is holding itself in the body. And it's no different with marriage therapy. A lot of times people will feel certain things in their body in a really heavy way. But we teach the couples that when you're feeling this, here are some things that you can do to self-soothe, and then take a little break and then come back and revisit it. And that really helps a person, and we refer to it as flooded when somebody is really kind of like offline. And that's another piece that you'll probably recognize from that child-parent relationship therapy. When somebody is flooded or in child-parent relationship therapy, we talk about when their frontal cortex is offline, they flip their lid, like Dr. Dan Siegel says. They're not really communicating in an effective way. They're not really thinking through what's being said or what they're saying. So some things can spew out that can be really harmful. So once you notice that you or your partner is feeling flooded, it's good to take a break, self-soothe, and then come back. Now, it's very different than stonewalling and storming out. It looks very gentle, like, I'm feeling flooded, I need to take a break, let's come back in 20 minutes or an hour, whatever it takes. But one thing that's important to know is during that break, you really want to notice if in your mind you're kind of perpetuating on thoughts like, I can't believe he said that to me, or who does she think she is? If those things are just kind of rolling around in your mind in like a ruminating way, you'll want to imagine a stop sign, take a big deep breath, like 4 seconds in, hold for 2 seconds, and 4 seconds out, and notice where you're feeling that in your body. And a lot of times it'll be in your throat or your chest, sometimes like in your arms and tightness in your hands or your fists. Notice where you're feeling that in your body and just tense it up even more, and then let it relax. And you may even want to imagine like a warmth going to it and just kind of relaxing and melting away. And at that point, you would want to go to a more pleasant thought, they call it thought changing. So I know through EMDR therapy, we have clients identify a calm place. So it's helpful to identify a place that you associate with calm, relaxing, safe, just wonderful feelings, and you're the only one in that image. That can help you to really calm down in a way that allows your prefrontal cortex to go back online, help calm everything down to where when you communicate, then you're communicating from a nice, calm, efficient level and not likely to say things or do any of those four horsemen that can damage your relationship. But especially that stonewalling is really tough stuff. The antidote to the stonewalling, the 20 minutes, is so very helpful. But know that all of these things, you want to not only make sure that you keep your relationship in check with your, other parent, whether you're together or co-parenting, and specifically we're talking about healthy and happy marriages in here, but you want to really kind of use these ways of communicating and responding to each other as really a blueprint of how you respond with other people. So in your other family relationships, your children, your extended family, and the people that you're around, treating them in ways that really send that message of, hey, you're important to me and I care, and staying away from that four horsemen of the apocalypse piece. So the criticism, the defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. So definitely you'll want to pull out those antidotes and use those when you see those pop up. But give yourself some grace. Notice when it comes up and do better. Maya Angelou had a wonderful quote, when we know better, we do better. And I've seen that true in many situations. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to this podcast episode. I have the show notes at parentingintherain.com. I also have a wonderful Facebook group. I really love all the people in there. It's Parenting in the Rain Community, and I also have a page. And I'm getting ready to launch a membership site coming up soon that I'm really excited about for child therapists. So stay tuned for that if you're a therapist listening. And I just really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. And until next time, take care.